I'll be honest, I'm a bit of a cynic. I don't know if it's from being on the internet too long or for just growing some standards, but I don't like a lot of films that get chucked our way these days. There's a lot of crappy new films, especially so with kids' films. But Pixar is always said to be the beacon of genuine good content 90% of the time, and despite knowing that, lately, I've seemed to be automatically against Pixar's project ideas. I was all for The Incredibles 2, but as a sequel, it was nothing compared to the original, and Toy Story 4 felt like such a cash grab until we actually watched it and saw that it wasn't at all. And yet, even though that was literally my last interaction with Pixar, for this year, I wasn't so confident in them again. I've already voiced plenty of my complaints about Soul and the direction it seems to be going, but another project I wasn't so keen on was Onward. I don't know exactly what it was about it, but the trailers just didn't hook me. The world seemed interesting, or at least unique, but the story and themes felt like they were done before. A magical quest of two sons trying to revive their father. What do you think the odds are there'll be a bunch of magical hijinks until we reach the end where there's only a 30-second tearjerker scene with the dad with the real Pixar-y ending, right? Looking at the whole picture, nothing really seemed to stand out. It was alright, but it didn't seem like that god-tier Pixar content, you know? So now here we are. The film has released some pretty good reviews. Critics are around 86%, whilst audiences are way up there. This is apparently a good film. And despite all of my concerns, apparently it was all for naught, as Pixar has done it again, flexing once again on why they are labelled as one of the best animation studios in the industry. But something in the back of my mind isn't satisfied. Looking at the wider context of Pixar, we are now diving into a new era for them. All of their big franchises have come to an end, and sequels are no longer in their mind. It's a hard task facing Pixar now, as they have to essentially create pure gold out of solely original concepts. That's incredibly difficult, especially for Pixar, a studio that has to contest against some of the greatest animated films of all time. They're at such a high standard that I can't imagine how difficult this new era must be for Pixar. So Onward is now our first film into this new era, and it's good. Better than many other family-friendly productions being produced right now, it harbors not so much on more mature themes, but themes of adulthood rather than childish wonder. Almost like Pixar is growing up with parts of its audience again. And that's nice. You know what Onward isn't? It isn't great. I gotta say it. I enjoyed watching it once, but that's probably the extent that I would go. Once. Obviously, Pixar has an uphill battle going on here, but something was intrinsically missing. Let's start with the characters. Pixar isn't really one for flat-dimensional characters. In the past, we've seen characters tackle all sorts of external and internal challenges, oftentimes linked into the movie's themes with one big fantastical revelation by the end of it all. In this film, there's some of that. Our main protagonist, Ian Lightfoot, is your wimpy shy guy trope. You know the one. He's scared of his new high school, not got a lot of confidence, and yeah, he looks a little familiar too. As a basis, that's not the most gripping character. It's a stock character. As the journey continues, he becomes able to wield magic and grows confident and bold as he does so. That's also pretty samey to your standard story though. There is one big revelation that the character has right at the end of the film, which I would say is this film's greatest highlight, but we'll tackle that as its own thing a little later on. Our second guy is Barley Lightfoot, the screw-up older brother on an endless gap year. Confident, magically informed, and kinda useless. Again, while not a specific example, he's still kinda tropey. He's a deadbeat, happy character. As the journey goes, he becomes less useless, even driving the plot forwards at times, and the ending gives him his own emotional wrap-up. But again, he doesn't stand out as a highlight of the film, just another accent to just how it is. Does that make sense? When watching Toy Story, Woody's characterization speaks volumes, as does Sully's, same with Dory's, etc. And while these guys aren't flat, they're also not the pinnacle of character creation. They're just normal boys that you kind of have seen in many other films before. As for the villain, there isn't really one. It's a quest story. The closest we get is that stepdad trope, though he never really gets to achieve anything with them, other than giving them an excuse to take some risks, I guess. And the, let's say, blockade at the end of the film is just voiceless. It's not really a deep villain. He's just a brute rival with no intelligent addition to the plot or its themes or anything. The story just has things happen. There's not really a whole lot of depth or meaning other than that one ending moment, and that alone isn't enough to save the film. Now, before we dip further into this breakdown, if you like what you see, do consider subscribing. You know how this all works, and I know how many of you are watching unsubscribed. So hey, I've been mentioning theming a few times already, but what actually are the themes connected to this film? Well, even there, I'm kinda beat. It's about fatherhood and being a family, but that only really ties in through the fact that the dad is half there, and the characters want to bring him back. The two get closer as brothers over the adventure, but I would argue that that would happen with any two characters on a journey together. It's not family exclusive, though they try to curve it that way at the very end. So then I guess maybe another one is tech is bad and magic is good. We see multiple characters enlightened by their magical origins over their technological conveniences, though it's not really a theme that hits too hard. It's just a gimmick that happens with a couple of bumps along the road. Plus, it doesn't really demonize tech too badly either. It's not like a phone gets flipped out of someone's hand, though I guess one is smashed during that first magical scene, so maybe it is boomer tech bad theming. The only other stretch I can find for a theme is that it's about adulthood and growing into a man, since our protagonist is newly 16 years old, and he grows some confidence and extra respect, but it's not really linked back to him throughout, as it's just the natural progression of the story. He's got a to-do list of things he wants to do, but it's more like what he wants to do with his dad, not what he wants to do to be a man, and, you know, overall, as I try to wrap it all together, the film just isn't that deep or meaningful. The ending twist is nice, but beyond that, it's just alright. It's not quite what you'd expect from the Pixar, you know? But you know what, let's dig a little deeper and tackle how the actual story tries to lay everything out. Starting off with that Pixar short, which turned out to not even be a Pixar short. It's a Simpsons short, about Maggie falling in love. It's not very strong, but hey, it's another reminder that the Simpsons movie is totally coming back. Maybe it will stick to 2D like this short did. Oh well. But no, the story surrounds Ian Lightfoot's 16th birthday. He's not a big man, he's very shy. We meet the other characters through his day, but it all ends when his mum Laurel reveals a present from his dad to both of the sons, a magical staff and the means to bring him back. And though Barley has no magical gift, Ian does, however, is only able to bring back half of his body. And though I never really mentioned the dad's character before, really, there isn't much there either. He's a pair of legs, and even when it's Pixar, there isn't much room to emote or evoke emotional scenes with just a couple of legs. There's a couple taps, but it really doesn't go any further than that. Throughout the movie, he's either just in the background or is the goofy punchline to some joke. Maybe if he was able to somehow make more heartwarming scenes in this movie, then it could have maybe pushed some boundaries, but he didn't, so it didn't. The two then go on a quest to retrieve the Phoenix Gem, enabling them to use the spell again and restore the rest of his body. First, they go to the Manticore Tavern, a mystical home of the Manticore before it became a family-friendly little restaurant. After a bit of back and forth, the Manticore is triggered into their old magical ways, terrorizing the tavern and becoming anew. The boys meanwhile escape with a crappy kids puzzle for a map, and they drive on the expressway to get where they're going fastest as per Ian's request. Meanwhile, there is a secondary plot of the mother Yanni chasing after the boys herself, finding the Manticore and uniting with her to rescue the boys from a curse that they are unaware of. This whole curse element also seems a tad wasted, since the Manticore conveniently forgetting is a bit of a cliche, and by the end, Barley seemed completely unfazed by its existence. He knows all the magical lore after all, you know, so whatever. So the boys get some gas and run into a bunch of biker gang pixies who pick a fight with them and chase them in a car scene down the expressway. I actually really liked this sequence. It was a lot of fun, and it linked to Ian's to-do list of adulthood, which I guess is the closest thing to a theme we've got, like achieving what you want to achieve, maybe? By the end, the Pixars are taught how to use their wings again for the first time because they almost fell onto the ground at the end. That was all it took? Seriously? And a truth being revealed that Ian thinks Barley is a screw-up heats up the following scene, though I personally found in the moment that I didn't even notice this conflict. I assumed Barley was angered by the police officers calling him a screw-up, as per the trope of being talked about behind your back usually goes, but the element of Ian lying and being exposed because of the rules of the spell went completely over my head. I don't know if that was just me expecting too much of the cliche since there already were a handful, or maybe I was focusing too much on the physical repercussions of lying with his limbs turning back to normal, or if the scene just didn't present it all too well. I'm not gonna go and watch it again to find out, so who knows. The Mum and Manticore also spend this time retrieving a curse-killing sword from a pawn shop, though all it really tells us is that the Manticore is willing to sting people with her scorpion tail now, I guess? And then she never does again? Also, I totally expected the sword to be already in Barley's possession as a Chekhov's gun kind of thing right at the beginning, but oh well. With Barley angry with Ian for believing he is a screw-up as the spell exposed, he uses this to convince Ian to trust in him and take the longer pathway rather than the expressway. His gut says so, so they do. And in doing so, they reach a bottomless pit. Once again, Ian must use magic in order to pass, though unlike his previous attempts, he actually succeeds. Wow. Though you can see where it can all go wrong in the scene. In fact, you've probably already seen it online. Actually, this whole concept, I'm pretty sure, has been done before anyway. This film is so tropey. By this point, their stepdad has joined the chase, and it's just a mini chase scene for a moment with the stepdad to not really contribute much, really. The moment of the van being destroyed, though, is actually pretty cool with the music and everything, and further shows Barley as less of a screw-up, which is pretty cool. A little character-driven moment. One of the few. Finding a clue and following the river, we finally get a little more character out of these characters, with Barley admitting his memory of a regret with his father choosing not to say goodbye when he was sick and covered in tubing. I personally really liked this detail. It suddenly gave us a real-life scenario that I imagine many of us have gone through at some point in our lives, despite the fantastical elements that are the reality of this world. And though it was brief, I would have loved to have seen more of that earlier somehow. Some heart, not just heart's fire speech, you know? Coming to the end of the river and a small booby trap that a pair of legs can solve, the boys find themselves back at school. They've just done one big loop. Angered by their failures, they split up, blaming each other. Also around this point, Laurel and the Manticore crash their car thanks to a flying pixie and choose to fly themselves with the Manticore's giant bat wings. Alright, I guess that's an attempt to wrap things up with the pixies to influence the earlier event, whatever. With the third act breakup, Barley reaches an old fountain being deconstructed by the bad modern world and finds the hidden Phoenix gem within it. Meanwhile, Ian sits with his dad's legs reminiscing on his to-do list and coming to discover that okay, this is the spoiler time, people, so this is the point where we're going to actually talk about the major highlight of the ending, so be aware of spoilers. He comes to the discovery that everything on his list is not for naught with his father. Although the things he wanted to do he can no longer do with half a father, he realizes he's already achieved them all in this day with Barley, essentially his replacement father figure. His father's not been in his life, but his brother's been looking after him this entire time. Reinvigorated with a newfound respect, the two meet up, and the ritual to revive the father begins. And it's as slow as humanly or non-humanly possible. With the gem taken, the curse begins, awakening a dragon beast built out of the school building with a goofy mascot face and all. And to their aid flies in the Manticore with Mother Yanni, and curse sword in hand. The fight happens until both are semi-defeated, so in a last dash of desperation, Ian is the one who chooses to join the fight, leaving Barley to talk to his dad alone. With his newfound confidence and magic, he fights the dragon and defeats it with a curse-crushing sword. But he is injured and blocked away in the process. And though he can't physically reach his father, he just about has a peephole to witness from a distance the 30-second conversation his brother Barley gets to have before vanishing away forever. This was impactful. After all of this build-up, all movie, you never even get to hear the final conversation. It's just a distant spectacle. Your imagination can fill the gaps. But it turns out this film was never about Ian and his father, because Ian had his father figure. Barley was the one with the regret that could finally be aired out, saying a final goodbye to his father. and that's strong. But at the same time, it could have been stronger. Pixar really has a thing these days for endings that just make you cry, but this one felt a little out of left field in the last few minutes. And maybe if it was hinted at least a little bit sooner, or as part of a bigger overall theme, then maybe it could have been stronger. But Toy Story 4, Coco, and all sorts of other films simply hit harder. And while it wasn't the ending I expected, but one I liked to see, it was a little formulaic for Pixar's sake and absolutely did not save the entire film. But it did improve it a fair bit, and hey, the father actually appeared, unlike my original prediction that this was going to be a trick by a villain and that the man being created was a baddie all along. So as the father fades away, no chats with anybody else, no Laurel, no stepdad, who I guess just sort of appears too late at the end and does nothing, and no Ian either. A sense of satisfaction still fills the air. And as an epilogue, Ian is a confident wielder introducing magic back into the world, whilst Barley gets a new van and connection to his dear old brother. Also, that stepdad is accepted into the family a little more, a bit of a subversion for the bad stepdad trope, you know? But he wasn't all that bad, and wasn't all that helpful either, so he was just kinda there. And with that, the film ends on a final shot of an old family photo of the two of them and their mum. As a family without the dad, with Barley as the one to look up to, as a reminder of how dissatisfied they were at the time? I'm not entirely sure. That final shot didn't quite hit a spark with me, but one way or another, that's your ending. It was good, but it didn't well you up with all too many emotions, yet didn't entirely let you down either. It was a whole lot of events, but not as much substance as a typical Pixar feature. It was a lot of alright, and that's about it. Obviously, with it being Pixar, the animation is superb, as is the voice acting and all of the other production elements, but the story leaves a lot to be desired, and the depth just kinda isn't there. It's not a cliche-filled generic slop, but it has a lot of tropey elements, some subverted, some the same, and while the world is unique, the events are strangely familiar. The ending was nice, but the build-up behind it and the foundations that laid everything out simply couldn't hold up to the expectations of prior Pixar projects. And the predictable beats were all there, and 90% of the time being followed. It's not generic, but it was familiar and simple. But that's just my opinion as a cynic who's watched too many films and spent too much time on the internet. I have a lot of faith in Pixar as a whole, but this year is leaving me with a lot more concerns than reliefs. I never even got around to mentioning the jokes, as the best ones were kinda all in the trailer, and even then, nothing really felt laugh out loud funny. It's not as cringy as some other films seem to be shaping themselves, but it also didn't feel like much of a comedy. It was just a light-hearted yet semi-serious adventure. Let's just hope that Soul doesn't fall down the same pitfall here. Let's continue onwards to bigger and better things. For now, my name's been Dazz, you don't really care, and I'll see you in a bit. Also, yeah, no green screen for these recent topics, I'll use them on the more relaxed timeframe videos. Thanks for watching all the way to the end though, I do hope that Pixar can surprise us with Soul next. See ya!